Go ahead.
Okay, so I click on speaker view, mute all. All right, we're good to go. Okay, so good morning, Europe. This is Diem25 calling in from Italy and around the world. Welcome to the first installation of what we are calling Beyond the Balcony, Organizing for European Solidarity. And in today's first session, we have Italy. So also a warm welcome to all of our national, collective and electoral wing members in Italy who have joined us for today's conversation about the state of their country, the context in which that country finds itself, both in terms of the pandemic, where Europe is right now, and what Diem25's role is and should be in these historic circumstances that we find ourselves in. Just a quick introductory note. This is a series of calls that the coordinating collective of Diem is organizing. We're starting today with Italy, but on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central European time, we will be continuing with France. After that, next Saturday, we have Germany, and so on and so forth. Every Wednesday and every Saturday, we will be going around Europe discussing with our coordinators from around the continent about the state that all of our nations are in these current circumstances and what our movement's role is and should be, so that we can arrive at a strategy that allows us to rise both to the historic occasion that we find ourselves in, but also to the historic mission that we set for ourselves in 2016 to democratize Europe. So without further ado, I would also like to give the floor to Yanis. This conversation will be done with CC members and NC and electoral wing members. And yes, I would like to give the floor to Yanis to also give an introduction from his side. And after that, we will start our conversation.
Thank you, Eric. Buongiorno, Italia. Good morning, Europe, the world, wherever you might be. These are tough times, and not just because of the deaths and the economic collapse. The Eurogroup meeting of April the 9th, very recently, is going to be remembered in the next 10 years as the moment when the final disintegration of the European Union began, unless something dramatic changes. Why am I saying this? We have a complete implosion, suspension of capitalism in Europe and in other parts of the world. But compare and contrast the response in the United States, 6% of GDP, of national income thrown at the economy in order to refloat parts of the economy. In the United Kingdom, 7% of GDP. In China, 10% of GDP. In the Eurogroup, well, in the Eurozone, the Eurogroup decided 0.22%. All the other hundreds of billions, CSM and all that, these are loans, they don't count. They're irrelevant when you have an implosion. Last week, there was another announcement in Germany by Chancellor Merkel, which should really shock all of us. She said that she's going to follow the experts' advice regarding fiscal policy in Germany. And the experts' advice from an outfit called Leopoldina, which I looked at, was very clear. Going back to the black zero in the budget of the Federal Republic next year. You know what this means? When they go to surplus, they will demand that Italy goes to surplus. And they will demand Greece, Italy, Spain, at a time when your GDP will have fallen by 20%, right? Your debt in Italy is going to rise because it doesn't matter whether you take the money from the European Stability Mechanism or you take the money from the European Central Bank, it's irrelevant. Preconditions, no preconditions, that's all just for the bourgeois press. What matters is that there will be no Eurobonds because Conte, Sanchez, Mitsotakis and Macron sold out on the Eurobond. They put it on the back burner, it's dead, it's finished. It was that Eurogroup meeting on the 9th of April that destroyed the Eurobond. That's it, dead and buried. Everything else is just propaganda. So effectively, whichever way Rome borrows, it will go all on the debt. So the debt will be rising while income will be falling. So next year, you're going to be facing There's no doubt about that. In the next year, 2 years, an austerity package, which will be worse than what Greece faced in 2011, just as Italy is trying to get up, it will be hit over the head by the Troika. I won't call it Troika, it will not be an MOU, no, but that's what you're facing, what Italy is facing, what Spain is facing. It is as if everybody is working for Matteo Salvini, because the only beneficiary from that is Matteo Salvini. And the Salvinis, the nationalist international that we at Diem25 and be saying has been the beneficiary of the liberal establishment's austerity policies. Diem25 has always been ahead. Our Green New Deal that we took to the European Parliament election last year has all the tools in it regarding the debt, investment and so on, that could be used today to help stabilize Europe. More recently, we came up with a more simple version of that. If you remember Diem25's 3-point plan involving the European Central Bank, the European Investment Bank, I won't go into that. But we were ahead of the time. We brought it up to date. If they adopted if Conte had demanded, because Conte talked about Eurobonds, but he didn't say who's going to issue the Eurobonds. We did. We said it should be the European Central Bank. Europe is in front of our eyes disintegrating exactly as we said in our manifesto on the 9th of February 2016. Remember what we said? Either it will be democratized, and that includes the economy, and that means unification. It means Europe behaving as if it cares about the demos, the European demos, or it will disintegrate. And I'm very much afraid that it is disintegrating. Quickly, why did we create Diem25? For 2 reasons. Because nobody else had an analysis of what was going on in Europe that made sense, that could be convincing to the people out there, whether they were in Germany or in Italy, in France or in Greece, in Holland or in Portugal. That was one reason. And to come up, of course, with policy proposals that went along with it. And the second reason, I will remind you, was because we identified something that was truly missing: transnational movements, a transnational progressive movement, a movement in which we're together, again, not as a federal party, not like the European Party of the Left, which is a federation of parties, each one of which is doing its own thing. And in the end, they have no coherent manifesto, no coherent analysis, no coherent policy. No, that we create a transnational movement where we are not a Greek branch, an Italian branch, a German branch, and then at the top, we have some kind of connection and agreement. No, we operate as a unitary transnational collective where we do have national collectives, but that's not the basic cell. The basic cell of a party, of our movement, is European members, DMers, the DSCs, doesn't matter whether they're Greek or Italian, and all the decisions and the manifesto come from this unitary transnational movement. That was why we created Diem25. I believe that even though we did very badly in the European Parliament elections last year, both the analysis and the prescription were what Europe needs. And the fact that it's not getting it is the main reason why it's disintegrating. I remember when we had the first example of transnationalism. Remember, it was about Italy. It was when Renzi was prime minister. And remember the referendum that he held for constitutional change with regions and so on. What did we do? We had a debate amongst Diem, and we all voted as to what our position should be in the Italian referendum. The Italians, as well as the Germans, the Greeks, and the Spaniards. That has never happened in international politics ever. That is transnationality as opposed to federalism. We didn't have a referendum amongst Italian members deciding what the Diem position should be in Italy. In the same way that when we created the Greek party, right, every single major policy decision was taken by an all-member vote, including everyone, Italians, Irish, Brits, and so on. That is our strength. This is what we really need to push forward to counter the disintegration of the European Union. And finally, let me finish off. Now, your country, like mine was in 2010, is ground zero of this crisis. the battleground for Europe is Italy. Italians are being lost by the European Union. The European Union, because of its austerity policies, is losing the hearts and minds of the majority of Italians. If it loses the hearts and minds of Italians, then Europe is finished. Because there can be no European Union without Italy. There can be no European Union with Matteo Salvini being dominant ideologically as well as programmatically. What we need to do, comrades, as far as I'm concerned, in Italy, we had problems last year. We have an electoral barrier, you know, tens of thousands of signatures you need to get in order to run in elections. That created a big debate between us. Should we go for a confluenza? Should we not run? Should we try to run on our own? We will have this problem again. But this is not for this moment, I don't believe. I believe what really matters this moment is relevance. I think Diem25 must become a relevant voice. And the only way to have a distinctive, relevant voice in Italy is to forget about elections for the time being. You know, how we overcome this, this particular problem of, you know, the constraints by the electoral law. We need an Italian manifesto that when Italians read an Italian manifesto of Diem25, right, which is consistent with Diem at large, that Italians read and say, this is it. This is what we need in this country. And at the same time, manifesto is not enough. We need you folks to develop a capacity to provide a running commentary, daily commentary on the site, find some ways that people will want to listen to because they will find out what the hell is going on in their country, in their Europe. They are not getting it from anybody else. They need to get it from you. A manifesto of what we are about in Italy, in Europe, in Italian, and a running commentary that convinces them that Diem is a distinctive voice without which they are in trouble. This is our task. I think that's what we should concentrate on in the next year or so. I don't believe you're going to have elections very soon in Italy. So let's forget the elections for the time being. Let's concentrate on making Diem a distinctive voice in Italy. So we need a 1-year plan, maybe 2-year plan for becoming significant in Italy in that sense. Finally, we need to be a force of unity amongst progressives in Italy. But this is very important. Unity is not going to be achieved if we are just one of the little tiny pieces that is added to the mosaic of incompetence that is the Italian left. We do not want to be part of one of those coalitions that are incoherent, that they emerge and then they die, they emerge and this die, you know, this very sad recapitulation of incompetence by the Italian left. Do we want to be a mosaic in that, a piece of the mosaic in that awful mosaic that is shrinking and is becoming irrelevant? I don't think so. I think we should pursue unity by becoming distinctive in our own mind and in our own narrative, and at the same time, approaching those who consider themselves anti-European Union. We need unity with the Lexiteers, because now the way that Europe is disintegrating, all we have to say to them is, look, we are not stupid. We're not idiots. We don't think that we're going to convince Merkel or the Dutch finance minister through the force of our arguments. No, we are putting forward proposals of what Europe could do in order to demonstrate to people out there what Europe is not doing, that it could do, even given its rules. And at the same time, we're preparing for a massive confrontation with Brussels, with Frankfurt, with Berlin. Okay, if the result of that confrontation is the disintegration of the European Union, well, we are here as a transnational, internationalist movement of Greeks, of Italians, of Germans, to pick up the pieces of this European Union. I've spoken far too long. Apologies for being extensive, but these are crucial moments. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanis. And any conversation is as good as the foundation that it's built on. So I think it was good to allow for a couple more minutes now for the introduction. From now on, we are entering the discussion phase. So please keep in mind, we have all of us a 3-minute limit to our interventions. And I have already a couple of people who have been waiting for the floor, starting with Alessandra Fatta. The floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, and good morning, Yanis. And I'd like to spend 2 words about transnationalism. And as an European and a transnational movement, in my opinion, we have to reinforce our position in Europe. And this is not just proposing economic recipes and economic measures such as the 3 points plan. I think that this is not sufficient. Well, I think what is needed now that our common house is fading away, and also Europe is disintegrated. We need a strong political initiative, and I think that Diem25 must commit and invest directly in political forces, movement, association, young people, such as Fridays for Future, Extinction Rebel, trade unions, women movements, starting from our proposal, but opening to a confrontation. So we have an European level. Maybe CC can deal with the political forces present on the field in the European Parliament and at national level, NC and electoral wings, not just in Italy, but everywhere. I'm not talking about Italy, but I'm talking about Europe in an overall view I try to give. NC and electoral wing have promoted initiative to favor a strengthening of the movement, diffusing the programmatic content, but in not just facing with institution, but also with all the movement and for political forces present on the European floor. And I'd like to know also what CC can think about this proposal, if also Yanis and CC, if they agree with this proposal of moving forward the political initiative and not just economic measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandra. The point has been taken about coordinating with other political movements and a broader political front. We will get back to it, but we have a couple more people that would like the floor. We'll collect some points, and then members of the CC and you as well can respond to each other's points if you like. It's part of the discussion. So I believe next up was Michele. Michele?
Yes, I have a technical problem with the camera. I tried to resolve it, so I passed the stack. You know, I don't like too much videocracy, so I try to to set up this with my brother. I will talk later. Thank you.
Okay, I was about to say you're wasting your 3 minutes with this introduction, but I understand it now. So in that case, we can go to Alberto.
Hello, good morning everybody. Thank you all for being here. Ciao anche a tutte le ascoltatrici e a tutti gli ascoltatori in Italia. Diem25 is definitely dedicated to radical change because that's what we need. When we predicted that Europe should be democratized or it will be disintegrated, in fact, as Yanis perfectly said earlier, we predicted today, these days, these weeks, this month that are ahead of us. This COVID-19 crisis is, in fact, just underline all the problems we already predicted months and years ago. So now, Europe, we must offer also solutions. Our binary choice is unify or die. Literally, unify or die. In order to understand our movement place in these challenges, lucky enough, we already have, thanks to people in this panel here today, we already have an implementation plan which is very detailed. We should create working groups. We should create working groups regaining an holistic feminist vision of our movement. We should work in the stability mechanism and the Eurobond problems. We should offer solutions. We should offer activities. We should offer proposals and campaigns. I guess we shouldn't forget also to create a working group regarding the protection and the development of all the minorities. I'm thinking both from disabled groups to all the LGBTQI issues and so on. We must develop appropriate policies. We must think in intersectionality, in funding all the issues we have. We must work strictly with our members. Our collectives cannot do this alone. Not a single NC in one country, not a single electoral wing in one country, not a single European coordinated collective can do it alone. We must work together in a coherent way. We must ensure continuity and good practices. We must have a coherent pan-European policy, which is the same throughout the whole Europe. This is an enormous challenge. Please, let's help us all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto, and thank you everyone for keeping to the time. Next, we have Stefania, and then I think Michele has resolved his technical problems, and we can go into some responses perhaps. So, Stefania.
Yes, thank you. I just, can you hear me? Okay. How our Italian government is dealing with COVID-19 and the economic crisis? Well, we have all seen Conte managing the crisis, but now our government has also come up with a kind of task force, and unfortunately, those people are working for the task force in spite of the fact they're like very intelligent and expert stakeholders. They're not really looking at how can we come up with a new economic model. They're just thinking on how we can just handle and manage phase 2 of COVID-19, whereas I think that a task force should be, in fact, focusing on what did we do wrong, how can we act differently, because this is the issue, we have to act differently. Now, despite the dramatic economic crisis, that we cannot afford to be delaying the environmental agenda. And as you were saying, Yanis, we have produced a beautiful blueprint, which has all the tools in it. And also we are just kind of implementing in Italy and all over the other countries, local actions. Definitely we should be going towards moving, mobilizing everybody to be moving towards public education, public healthcare system, and also changing completely that production and consumption patterns. Now, as far as the Green New Deal Italian agenda is concerned, we have identified major bullet points such as carbon tax, phasing out incentives to fossil fuels and soil consumption. But as we know, resilience is not only an economic narrative. Resilience is also about knowledge, it's also about education, and it's also about culture. And as we are just recently seen in one of the very interesting Diem25 episodes, Joan Hari was just highlighting the fact that how important is the mental health. And this is the fact. You know, this is the issue. There cannot be a healthy democracy without a healthy mindset for how to be changing the course and the direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefania. Couldn't agree more. Now we have Michele, I believe.
Yes, I confirm. I'm Michele Fiorillo. I don't know why I appear as Paola, probably because it was one of the link the comrades tried to send me to be here with you. So yes, in Italy, the consensus towards the European Union is really at its historical minimum. It was around 42% in September. Now is at 27% of popular appreciation, as from the last more accredited polls. Unemployment and population without adequate means of subsistence are growing day after day. So are the concern and frustration of the people towards the future. So the situation really is, like already Yanis underlined, is potentially explosive and risks to consign easily the bel paese in the hands of Salvini and Meloni and their nationalistic and neo-fascist desires. Luckily, next political election will be probably no earlier than 2023. Our Emilia-Romagna successful operation in support of Ellis Line and Coraggiosa contributed, in fact, to block the risk of snap elections that Salvini aimed to. And that would allow Diem25, in fact, to organize at best infrastructure on the ground in order to offer a credible alternative, starting from the regional election, probably next autumn, and connecting our 3 points proposal to the Green New Deal plan, to be declined at national, regional, and municipal level, as already experimented with the Green New Deal for Emilia-Romagna plan. And it is already in the making in Venice, in Veneto, in Marche region, and elsewhere. And a campaign to radically change a European institution through the building up of a civic constituent power towards an European Constitutional Assembly that we know is one of the foundative aim of our movement. Another issue is the restriction of representative democracy. The Italian parliament auto-mutilated itself with a cut of 345 MPs, and the postponed constitutional referendum will be decisive to confirm or not this populistic measure imposed by Five-Star Movement to Democratic Party as prerequisite of their own government. In this situation, citizen assembly could be the way forward to create a civic counterpower. The Diem25 should aim to enter in Italian parliament, but we will need to experiment first these innovative forms of participatory and deliberative democracy and integration of representative ones. To be considered maybe also a shadow government of Diem25 in Italy, involving maybe some of our advisory panel members, so to give authority transnationality to the operation. Possible role of a progressive international to give prestige to Diem25 in Italy, as in all Europe, and be the point of reference for all the progressive citizen organizations. To do all that, we need the growing up of a cultural counter-hegemony involving all the positive and creative energies so fragmented in Italy as in the rest of Europe. A Diem TV in Italian, probably, and a relaunch of a Diem Voice, our Diem Voice network, connected dispersed artists in Italy, could be both help for the scope. And I think we need more of this type of meetings, also not necessarily direct in YouTube. Let's remember YouTube is a mean owned by capitalist forces. Let's have more also meetings in Zoom meetings, not public, to have the most accurate debate between electoral wings, NC and CC. Remember, we convened the Red Swallow plan by the electoral wing 1 month ago, and we are ready to discuss it with Yanis that asked this in Prague and all the coordinating collective. Thank you all, comrades.
Thank you, Michele. I would hate to stop the momentum that we've managed to pick up on now here. I see a lot of people would like the floor, so I'm gonna give the floor to a couple more people before we go into responses. Clearly, brain fluids are moving, so let's not stop that. Simona, you have the floor, and then 2 more comrades, and then we will start with some responses.
Sorry, I wanted to take the discussion on health services issues and how Italian COVID crisis that has been very peculiar has a broader meaning for all Europe and all the world. Actually, Lombardy crisis. Lombardy is the region where the COVID spread first and hit dramatically with 20% of deaths in ill people. So Lombardy shows how austerity is a tremendous thing for everybody, not just the poor or the common people. Lombardy used to be an excellence in health services, but it was an industrial health services. It was an industry, and it was what the market does to our health and our well-being. So industrial health services are those that produce profit, but there is an inverse care law in health services that says if you leave it to the market, it shall go to those that need it the less, and not to primary care, basic care. The result is Lombardy had healthcare based on hospitals, based on long-term facilities that were unchecked by the state. And we had cases already at the beginning of February, and that were hidden in long-term facilities. And health workers were forbidden to talk about it. We have laws that forbid employees to talk, to say things that may be of disadvantage for their enterprise, and this applies to health facilities. So nobody was able to talk of it. And we weren't able to track and check people at home. Everything followed on hospitals. So hospitals and long-term facilities become centers of contagion. 1/10 of deaths is of health care workers. So the Lombardy disaster calls for a public health system that is for everybody, and that is under a strict control of the government, and it calls for a European health system that is for everybody. And I think what we should do from Italy, from the disaster of Lombardy experience, is to advocate for an European universal health coverage, and for the development of primary care and basic care that are those that serve everybody and not just those who can pay, because this is what even those who can pay need.
Thank you, Simona, and also thank you for starting to introduce a new element to the discussion, which is to start coming up with concrete ideas through our interventions of where Diem and how Diem can place itself in the context of Italy, and keeping in mind everything else that is going on in the Diem25 ecosystem. So let's try and start bringing those things into our interventions slowly. Let me go back to my list and see who is up next. I'm trying to keep to man, woman, and so far you're making my life very easy by having a choice of both. I believe the next person is Stefano. Stefano, please, floor is yours. Stefano, you changed your mind? Perhaps technical difficulties, in which case we can move ahead. I believe I got a private message from, at the end there, Costa, you can jump in instead of Stefano.
Okay, thank you guys. First of all, I want to thank you all for taking your time to have this discussion with us, because bringing finally all of us together is something I've been looking forward for a long time. So thank you again. As it has been already pointed out, Italy is at the center of the current political scene, and it is also in some way the epicenter of the political turmoil that is evolving around the EMS Eurobond discussion. And besides that, I must say that I take pride, and I also take pride in this. Italy is also one of the, let's call it that way, strongholds of Diem25. At least based on our social media activity, which for now is unfortunately the only thing, our only asset, besides, of course, Mera's parliamentary presence. In the past few months, the task force communication, which I'm part of, has successfully, yet not completely, re-energized Diem's membership, at least here in Italy. We have been, for the last few months, pushing all of our campaigns, from EuroLeaks to Diem25 TV, which has in part resulted in an increased interest in our activities, and also in Diem25 as a political entity. Yet, after the initial excitement and interest generated by these campaigns, most of those who approached Diem quite rapidly started losing interest, and because of our quite clear political insignificance, they eventually abandoned us. So for us communicators, although it feels a bit strange and silly to address myself this way, it is very hard to understand our long-term strategy as a political movement, and consequently to build a coherent and rational mindset to adopt when managing our communication tools. So to come to my point, since we do not have the premises, the foundation upon building a political party, which, and I say this in all sincerity, is what I would love to see as soon as possible, I warmly suggest to build an engaging young movement that will one day be the base, the foundation of our party. Because as Massimo Amato said yesterday at a conference he held on our Facebook page, Europe won't become a federation and won't adopt a Green New Deal in this time of crisis if it hasn't done it by now. But one thing is for sure, Europe is reaching a deadlock. And in 2 years, not too soon, not too late, I'm certain we will need a political party here in Italy that gives voice to the third space, and that is built by young, without discriminating our seniors, of course, but we will need a strong base that feels part of a cultural and political project that will never be able to start from the top of the movement, in my opinion. So as long as we're not able to build a party, and I believe we do not have the human capital and the means to do it now, we have to enhance our movement as such. And I think doing that requires a lot of creativity, sensibility, and also, I believe, trust between the organs of our movement. And because unilaterally, we will not manage to energize a relevant base, we should think outside the box and use creativity in order to build that base. And it will not happen just by us providing unilateral output. We have to engage our membership and make it part of our activities. So I think we should really be careful with our strategy. Not just we should not just translate what we create at the European level and offer it as an output, as a unilateral output to our Italian members, but we have to find ways to engage with the membership and make it part of our projects. So
Thank you, Costa. Thank you very much. Thank you for introducing this very important topic, one that we always keep coming up across because it's so inherent to the particularity of the Diem25 project, this pan-European concept that still needs to be rooted deeply in the national context of each European country where our project is active. And that is the reason why national collectives and electoral wings exist. Otherwise, the coordinating collective would be doing everything itself. It needs these bodies in order to translate and adapt the European ambition of Diem25 to Italy, to France, to Germany. What the CC is there for is to ensure the coherence, the political coherence between the project in Italy and the project in Germany, to ensure that whoever is a member in one country can feel like they are a member of all the Diem25 countries, that there is no difference there. And that should be our job, and never to put hurdles and challenges of any other sort to any of you. And indeed, the coordination between the movement, the electoral wing, it's the same project. The electoral wing is a tool of the Diem25 mission. It's a parallel project to it, which is why both national collective and electoral wing members are here in this call today together. And we're not having separate ones. It's the same discussion. It's the same ambition. So thank you very much for introducing that. I think up next we have Antonella. And now I will actually try and bring CC members to start responding to some of these points like I just did. So we have Antonella, Patrizia, and then I will try and give the floor to a couple of CC members. Antonella, please.
Yes, thank you, and nice to see you all. Starting from the manifesto, which is the suggestion of Yanis, I want to tell that we wrote a first draft of a manifesto, but we didn't receive any feedback, and this is not good, because if we don't have a real dialogue on what we try to conceive, these these two ways trust lower. But apart that, I think that it's right that the vision of Diem25 is the right vision, and I think that we have to build starting from our milestone idea, and we have to exploit this period, this special period, enforcing that idea. So the fear of death and isolation will grow up suicide, as happens in 2008, and this will worst. So I think that the idea of protection of all these people, fragile, have to be our real pillar to decline in all manner. And I think that we should try to impose the fact that the green transition and the public health care are the real reason to break out the no bailout clause, the Article 125 of the treaty. And starting from that, we have to impose our blueprint and all possible local adjustment of that vision. Well, all people are concentrated on the mutualization of financing the recession, but I think we should focus even on mutualizing the decision of expenditure, how this billion will be invested, because the risk is that the expenditure will be toward the oligopoly, which is already positioned to take advantage of all this, not a lot, but for instance, in Germany, or I mean, I fear even some person in the task force, which have a background in funds. So we have to contrast the possible financialization of all this bulk of public expenditure. Thanks.
Thank you, Antonella. I'm gonna skip ahead to a CC member that would like the floor. I see Cici Velisariu is here with us. Cici, would you like the floor? And then I'm gonna go back to the rota.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to see you all. We love Italy. We have such beautiful memories and experiences of your culture. I would start with a question addressed to you. We know that Conte's popularity has risen enormously. Perhaps I'm wrong, I don't remember the percentage. However, for me, that I've been following the virus situation, the epidemic in Italy, this poses a question that I would like to address to you. How do you explain this? And perhaps the second question would be to tell us about the Lega problem, Salvini, how it stands. And another point, because I heard very carefully what Costa mentioned, which raised many issues to my mind. Eric's response was a complete response about, you know, the way in which Diem's central campaigns and text should be adapted to the national level. But coming from Greece and having Meras's experience, I find that rallying behind a political program, and I'm saying political program in the wide sense of the word, not a specific one, perhaps might help the building up of electoral wings. One such an issue could be related to my question. I mean, how come and Conte's popularity increases? What about the neoliberal sort of narrative that seems to be disproved by the epidemic? And last but not least, perhaps, I mean, a democratic demand for the political representations of political parties or organizations that don't reach that level above which they can enter parliament. This is just ideas that come to my head. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cici. Anyone who would like to respond specifically to this, please type in the chat so I can give you the floor a bit sooner so that we can keep on this discussion. But in the meantime, the floor goes to Patrizia. If Patrizia still wants it, that is.
Yes, of course I want. Thanks,
Good.
Eric. Good morning, everybody, once again. Let's start from a very interesting article that I read yesterday, where it indicated Diem25, together with the Forum of Disuguaglianze, led by Fabrizio Barca, as the new incoming movement in terms of innovation for the future of Europe. So I do believe that we have really a great opportunity now, more than ever, because what we have been saying 6 years now is more than actual. If I might go strictly to propose concrete action on what we could do at the moment, let's think all together the opportunity to create, for example, a parallel task, something like the one already created by our Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte, in charge to figure out the day after sanitary emergency. My idea is to create a task at the European level in order to show how problems should be solved out at the European levels and not always by the national, can we say, confine, I don't know the English word. And one more point we can also think about altogether, if the opportunity to launch, or maybe it's better say to relaunch, a European, a conference of all Mediterranean countries, because Spain, Italy, Greece, we are always considered a country of level B. But I do believe that we showed that in this coronavirus crisis, we really demonstrated to face up the problem. I don't want to say better than others, but quite good. So it's also time for all these countries to get a right place in the European table once forever. Okay, thanks for the attention.
Thank you, Patrizia. And as a proud second-class citizen of the European Union, as a Greek, I feel for what you've said. At the same time, I feel like there's no better way to abandon and give up on the European idea than to institutionalize the difference between the Mediterranean and the rest of Europe. So I think there's a big conversation to be had there about that idea. There is definitely something that needs to be tackled and addressed. But whether that is the way forward, I don't know. I think it's a good point. I hope somebody will jump on that point. I believe the next person for taking the floor was meant to be Stefano. So Stefano, did you manage to figure out your mic? Maybe, no, we still can't hear you, unfortunately. Sorry, mate. Sorry, we'll come back to you. I still have you on my list, so we'll keep trying. In that case, I will go to Veralisa, who I inexcusably forgot earlier. So apologies, Veralisa, and you have the floor.
It's okay. Thank you very much, Eric. Well, I would like to try to keep order. I mean, I will recall what Michele Fiorillo and Costa Iuri told, and I agree, I totally agree with them. And also I support very much Patrizia's proposal. Why? Because I think that we have two dimensions on which focus to. The movement dimension and the political party dimension. Of course, we all agree that the present moment is absolutely an epochal and a historical moment, and we have to catch it because Diem25 has a vision. This is its strength, and we have to take the floor. We have to be on the stage and to reach the press services as much as we can. Now, this is the moment because Europe can die, and we have to try to avoid it. Of course, we have to try to make it take a social direction, a green direction, all things that we have in our DNA. And no, I don't know if it's the English version. So we have all the ideas, all the right ideas to do this job. But we need, we strongly need to root our movement. And so we have to enhance our electoral wings. Because, as Sisi Velisario said, we need to, to grant in some way political representation to all the people who has not voice. So that's our principal task at the moment. Of course, it's a long-term task, but we need to pursue it. So. To do this, we need to be democratic also. We cannot also say that that democracy is the best way to live. I mean, but we need to be democratic. So I quickly got through the implementation plan, which was published yesterday. Actually, I see there that, I don't know, I'm afraid that we are a bit turning our organization into an NGO, and this is not our task. I mean, I think that we need to be, we need to practice democracy. So I see there too many co-opted tasks in some way, or maybe it seems to me that they are so. I don't think that this is our solution. I mean, we elect coordination bodies, and that's the reason why we need to use them. I mean, so we have to root our movement. To do this, we need to know who the members are, for example. We need to organize them. We need to give them representation means. And I think that the bodies that we build in every countries have this task. So let's move on this direction, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Veralisa, and I really agree. It's a very fine line one needs to tread between being effective and being inclusive. And that is something that you're never done working on, you know, and democracy is a work in progress and all of those things, and do things, adapt, fail again, fail better, all of that, you know, it's a process. It's definitely a process, but it's our process, you know, that's what we signed up to. So we need to buckle up. It's going to be a long ride along those lines. Stefano, do I dare try and give you the floor again? Are you even here? I've asked him to log out and in again. No, he hasn't come back yet. So we're still trying to resolve that. Let's go to Ludovico. Ludovico?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing this. I think we have a very strong need of moments like this throughout Europe and throughout our national instances. I mean, I would like to pick up some points that were raised earlier and also raised at the beginning by the introduction by Yanis. And it's like, I have the feeling that we need to be clear with ourselves on the fact that there is a difference between being right and building cultural and organizational hegemony. And the difference between, in the Italian political history, there is probably an unfortunate example of the difference between being right and building hegemony, which is the Action Party. The difference between being right and building cultural hegemony is developing the infrastructures and the network and the organizational capacities, and also the dialogues with people other than us that enable us to have a strong presence, that enables us to make our point and actually to be that force that is able to pick up the pieces when the coalition between neoliberals and neoliberal fascists to some extent comes to fruition. I mean, the example of 2 days ago of Lega Nord voting against Eurobonds is quite illuminating of the alliance between trickle-down economics and racist politics. I think that the issue here is a matter of when Yanis mentioned the need to enter into dialogue with Lexiteers, it's a matter of like being in the place where Lexiteers are as well, which means developing not only developing a network of people in trade unions, developing people a network of people in other form of organizations where working class people that might not agree with us are in their everyday life. Let's remember, for example, that at the beginning of this crisis, one of the first moments of social conflict was a wildcat strike requesting the closure of factories that were still kept open at the beginning of the contagion. So it's a matter of developing an idea that workers across Europe share more than the rivalry between their governments, and it's within this infrastructure. I think that the developing parties, developing a pan-European party that has national articulation is fundamental, and we need to be also to understand that if people make history, they make it in conditions not of their own choosing. So we have to understand that the different countries sometimes require different tactical and strategic decisions based on their institutional system, their political system, and the configuration of the party field where we find each other. So like what, for example, Michele said earlier about sometimes contingent decisions like Emilia-Romagna decision can have massive strategic spillover effect, positive spillover effects if managed carefully and with the right tools. So yeah, like I think that we need to focus on having clear in mind what we want to achieve, but understanding that we need to be flexible in the tactics that we need to achieve them across Europe and in each European state. That the configuration of the field is very different. Like I mean, that was also shown, for example, in the UK case before Brexit, where a two-party system is very different from a proportional system, for example. And we need to develop a grassroots, widespread network of activists that enables us to work with social as well as political organizations on the ground to build an incisive and determinant political presence that allows us to be the network that picks up the pieces of Europe after this storm is past. Thanks.
Cheers, Ludovico. I believe I had Piera with a request for the floor, and then we have Ivana. So Piera, you need to unmute yourself first. All right, yeah, there you go.
Okay, hello all my comrades, all my women, men, LGBTQIA, all in the world, in Italy, in Europe. we are now 2 millions we are 2 millions of infected persons and 120,000 deaths. That is a study of Johns Hopkins University at COVID-19 time on 15 April 2020. In Italy, in Lombardia, in Milan, Bergamo, Brescia, the heart of our infection and our industrial civilization, the region of Lega, of Salvini said, we want to march toward normality in name of 3D, distance, social distance, digital plan, working, smart working, and tele teaching, and diagnostic test. But where are the women in this pandemic patient night? The government, the Italian patriarchal government, say all men, technical, few women, four women only. They said, hashtag, io resto a casa, hashtag, I stay home, hashtag, meno spitimu. But we, transnational women of Diem, and not only, we said no, in name of one bride, or one home house at home who sacrificed herself for individual responsibility. No to the rhetoric of state. We said, hashtag, io resto a casa, ma, hashtag, I stay home, but, hashtag, meno spiti Allah. We have a lot of concentration of exploitation of women in COVID time. For women that are at home, that have to live with a violent man without possibility of asking help. With women that have to work outside, not protected by COVID virus, COVID-19. For women, all the women that have not now access of legal abortion in hospital and consulate. For women that have to work exploited outside. For clochard women out the street without recovery. For migrant women without permit. Our life are in a time with a timeless time in depression, but we fight against this COVID crisis. We will be all together in our Italy Diem women movement that make a lot of campaign of solidarity. You have to know that we started. And with all the women, doctors, sisters, homeless, housewife, we will say no to exploitation of women. We want a Europeanism, income of quarantina, he said, un reddito di autodeterminazione. We want to be all together for the first mile without casseroles from the balcony. We want to be all together against this COVID crisis in one violent, patriarchal, neoliberal society. Carpe diem.
Thank you, Piera. And if all we did in this call is just give you the floor, I think the call would still have been a success. So thank you very much for that intervention. It also ties in with the importance of one of the earlier interventions. Stefano is back and he's not even muted. He's so excited he's fixed his mic that we are getting to see him now.
Yes.
Could you please mute
Sorry,
yourself, Stefano, mute yourself.
Mi sentite adesso?
Wait. There we go, fixed it. It's very important what Piera mentioned. It also ties in with one of the earlier interventions regarding the feminist task force that is needed. And as it mentioned, the implementation plan already, that is one of the things that we are rolling out. A task force on feminism and another one on diversity, both of which being pan-European in scale. Coordinated so as to strengthen those elements within our movement and improve in those fields. So thank you, Piera. It's very important that is very high on our agenda and always remains high, regardless of the political circumstances we find ourselves in. It's always relevant. So now, without further ado, let's check out Stefano's microphone. Stefano, the floor is yours.
Thank you for all sorry for this show. Thank you for this very, very important moment. Thank you, Yanis, for your presence. I tell you a little but concrete thing for us. The COVID-19 health emergency will leave a major global economic emergency in the field. The symptoms of this are obvious and suggest what will happen. It will be inevitable. Globalization will be eradicated not by a radical and fair economic proposal, but by a virus. The depression will affect, above all, the part of the productive economic sector closest to the community that of micro and small business and local shops activities that represent the active and the beating heart, which need the concrete and serious answers, and with which the local administrator, the good ones, had constantly confronted on the field. Among other things, our attention and proposal dedicated to this important sector of the economic code allow us to erode the consensus of the Lega of Salvini and nationalist propaganda, which for too long have had free rein in being privileged interlocutors. I believe that the network of local administration of Diem25 should also take off at a European level, as it was in the program since the first founding meeting of Aiello del Friuli on the last October, where almost 30 participants, Italian and also Slovenian, hosted by Andrea Bellavite, Major of Aiello del Friuli and member of the Italian electoral wing, had considered essential. The network of local administrators of Diem25 for radical municipalism is a concrete utopia and itinerant tool able to collect the drives that rise concretely from the territories and connect the large and small municipal experience that work. For this reason, I kindly ask the CC to help us at European level to identify all the members who were or have been local administrators for their involvement in this concrete proposal. Thank you. I have finished.
Thank you very much, Stefano. Duly noted. Wait, because I know you're on your phone and I know how tricky that can be. I know you managed to mute yourself. Okay, very good. Thank you. So made a note of that and we'll make sure to get back to you. I believe next up we had a member of the CC, which is good to mix things up a bit. We have Ivana. Ivana, all yours.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here today and for this really interesting and lively, much needed discussion. I would like to thank Piera for bringing in the very important issue of women, especially in healthcare and taking jobs. But of course, not only women, we are all in this together, and we should reach as much workers, precarious workers and 0-hour contracts workers as possible. You've seen that planes are going from Romania to Germany to pick up vegetables. And, you know, it's nice that some vegetables are going to be on German tables, but what about the social security and social health care for these workers, which are being shipped to other countries? So, having said that, I would like to go back to something that Antonella and Costa said, and I couldn't agree more with the part that we should focus on building the movement, on spreading our solutions, which we are offering, including 3-point plan that we have. Also building a narrative that will be understandable and simple enough for every member, every citizen of each of our countries to understand and to be able to see what is the benefit. What we've been failing to do, I think, not just Diem, the left in general, is the very complicated narrative, and that's why the right is winning. Because they are very easily getting their message to voters. That's something that we should get better at, and that's where the movement building and talking to people, spreading the idea comes in. The day after was mentioned also a couple of times, and what day after for me is post-capitalism. And we also have this pillar in under construction. So that's where our focus should go. Picking up on something that Ludovico said about the flexibility and that each country is different. Of course it is, and that gives the variety and the beauty of pan-European movement. But having in mind all of our differences, cultural, mentality, and so on, we should all have one possible solution in mind. And that's what Diem is offering, not so much confluenzas, alliances, and coalitions. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you for that, Ivana. Thank you very much. I see we have another intervention. Andrea, sorry, I missed you the first time. Go ahead, Andrea Serra.
Thank you, Eric. Hello, everyone. Very shortly, I have a reflection to do with you, but also a question for CC member, for Yanis. In the last weeks, we are talking about what, in facing crisis, Italy could or should do on one hand, and what Europe should do on the other hand. Let me introduce another level, because this is a pandemic. The family Sassen and Senate told us, speaking with Horvath, it showed the crisis of the capitalism system. For the crisis, as
Andrea, I'm sorry, but your sound, Andrea, time out. Sorry, your sound isn't very good. We're only hearing you intermittently. So if you could connect to a different internet source, if it's possible, we can't really make out what you're saying. And I'll come back to you. But if it's possible to try and reconnect to a different internet source. Sorry about that. Was there anybody else that would like the floor? I actually don't have anybody else on my list. Would anybody like to intervene while we wait for Andrea?
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, there we go. Andrea's back. Let's try.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
It's a bit better. Yes. Thank you.
I can start from the beginning. Okay. We are talking about what in facing crisis Italy could or should do on one hand, and what Europe should do on the other hand. But I think it's important to introduce another level of discussion, because this is a pandemic, and how, for example, the Sassene Senate family told us, speaking with Horvat, it showed the crisis of the capitalism system. For the example, we can think to the global chains crisis, as Saskia Sassen said, and the opportunity to return to local relationships, or on how our town should face the climate change, as Richard Sennett said. So I think this is a period on what we can play a role on an international level too, not also in a European level. And I think the international progressive could play this role. And I would like to ask you, to our comrade of the CC and to Yanis, if there is some news about that. We heard something about September in a recent video of Yanis. So what's new on this? Thank you to be here, and I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Yanis, would you like to respond to that and maybe take the opportunity to react to some of the things we've heard?
Thank you, Eric. Absolutely. Okay, factual response to Andrea's point. We have worked extremely hard to make the Progressive International happen between us. Even though we are live, it doesn't matter. Everyone can hear us, but don't tell anybody. The primaries in the United States slowed down our partners in the United States, the Sanders Institute, Bernie Sanders, Jane Sanders, understandably. And now we have had the COVID-19 situation where it's very difficult to make plans for travel. But so far, we are putting together the board of the Progressive International. It's very impressive. You will be very pleased to see, the variety of movements and personalities involved in that. And we have a date. You're right, 18th of September. September 18 in Iceland. We've been invited by the Prime Minister, the great and wonderful Katrín Jakobsdóttir, to be there in order to make it the first physical Congress of the Progressive International. But of course, we have to wait to see what happens with airlines, with travel. Maybe we'll have to postpone it, you understand, but it's happening. The Progressive International is happening. Since I have the floor, courtesy of Eric. Eric, you're doing a fantastic job chairing this meeting. Thank you so much on behalf, I think, of everyone. A few responses to things that I've written down while listening to all of you folks. Patricia, you had two ideas that are giving me more ideas. One is, we need to show that Diem25 can create a task force, which is far better than what the European Commission is doing, to answer the question, how do we rebuild after this disaster? I think that it's crucial that we do it at a pan-European level, since this is a pan-European crisis, like the Commission is doing it at a pan-European level. And what I think is going to be very useful, both in practical terms and in terms of demonstrating the importance of Diem25, is to show how our Green New Deal can be developed very simply in order to answer the question, How do we mutualize, as someone said, health? How do we mutualize investment? How do we include the green transition with massive funding that, von der Leyen's silly Green Deal simply never provides? There was no money involved in that. So I think that it will be important. That's something to organize at the central level. Eric, you're going to have to work hard. David Adler will have to work hard. Ivana, all of us will have to work hard. All of you in Italy, to show how the Green New Deal was not just something that we forgot last year, but it is the foundation for creating a post-pandemic Europe that works. That's one of the ideas that I got from Patricia. The other one, Patricia, you mentioned the Mediterranean Conference. I agree with Eric on this. We should not give up on our pan-Europeanism. Yes, it is true. The Dutch and the German governments are treating us as not second class, sixth class citizens of Europe, okay? There's no doubt about that. But we must not abandon our progressive comrades in Holland, in Denmark, in Sweden, in Germany, in Austria, right? They have to be on board. We must not make them feel that we have abandoned them and we are clustering around the south and we are creating an alternative southern Diem. No. But I think that, I'm getting this inspiration from Patricia's idea. And this is also a message to my comrades and colleagues in the CC. We need to start planning Prague #2 very quickly. Sometime in November, maybe December, after the Progressive International, we have to get together to have a conference of Diem in order to plan for Europe after this disaster, whatever that means. Post-capitalism, the Green New Deal, a mutualized health system. That would be fantastic. I'm very energized by the idea of seeing all of you in one capital. It could be Rome, could be, I don't know, Napoli, wherever. And we get together to discuss Diem25's blueprint for a post-COVID-19 world. And finally, regarding Italy, Michele and I think Ludovico, look, it would be great if we had a capacity to put together a shadow government in Italy. But take it from somebody who has tried that for 3 years now in Greece. We were very strong here in Greece, and we did try to create a shadow government 2 years ago. It didn't work very well because you need to have people who are firstly on top of the situation of their portfolio, health, education, agriculture, industry, labor, foreign affairs, migration. So you need one person for each one of these ministries, and you need that person to have not only the skills, but also the time, and to be surrounded by people that can also feed that person. You don't want to have a dictator for each one of those areas. From my experience, that we could not do this until very recently. We're doing it now we're in parliament, but even now it's not very easy. So I think it's too early to have a shadow government because you can announce it, you can set it up, and then nothing happens. And that is, a failure. But that's why I said in my introduction, it's crucial that the Italian manifesto is beautiful, exciting, surprising, energizing. And I'm sorry to hear that there was a first draft that we didn't comment on. Well, we have to get better, all of us. We are doing 100 million things, but let's do it. And secondly, until we get to the point, Michele, when we have a shadow government, let's plan for Diem Italia to make one statement every day, one statement that is surprising, energizing, and which makes people who are not part of Diem25 say, this is interesting what they're saying. And where our progressive agenda is being established. Yeah, that's not easy. It's much easier than having a shadow government, but still it's not easy. Make that point, yeah? So ask yourselves, what did we say yesterday as Diem Italia that shook Italians? Say one thing every day. That's to begin with. This is what I meant about a recurrent running commentary. And finally, folks, when I hear Italian comrades talk about the hegemonic left and the hegemonic movement, of course, my heart goes out to the notion. We're all Gramscian. We're all Gramscian. We all want the left to have hegemony. And of course, we need to be flexible. And that's why we have electoral wings. You're quite right, Ludovico. You know, what works in Greece will not necessarily work in Italy or in France or in Britain. That's why we have electoral wings, to be flexible and to adapt to the local circumstances. But if I may, I hope you don't chastise me for this. A small criticism of the Italian left with all this Gramscian hegemonic tradition behind it. Too much flexibility, comrades. The left, over the last 20 years, 30 years, has shown so much flexibility that it lost its spine. You need a flexible spine. But when you go from spine to no spine, you have maximum flexibility and nothing whatsoever to offer, which is why the Italian left has become absolutely irrelevant. And this is why, you know, we're not going to become a small part of that stupid, irrelevant left that has really taken, you know, a hegemonic progressive movement of the 1970s and turned it into the joke of the universe. We need to lead the way. We do not want to attach ourselves to various, you know, sinistra italiana kind of stupid silly parties that are only there to promote careers. The only reason why you had the liberali, equali, and sinistra and so on was people wanted to have jobs. Now, that should be exactly the opposite of what we want, all right? I've spoken more than enough. I won't speak again, I promise. So let me bid you farewell and give you all my love, and looking forward to seeing you up close.
Thank you, Yanis. Now you know why we give Yanis the floor only twice every time, because he just comes up with ideas and work for everybody. So we limit that to 2 interviews every time. So I think there's a lot there that we can use as both a conclusion to the discussion. Let's have some stacks in the chat, please, to see who would like to respond to some of the things Yanis has said. We were, of course, you know, the assembly in Prague was, of course, the first introduction, the one about laying foundations. The second assembly cannot be, again, about reworking the foundations. It needs to be about moving forward, about improving what we started in Prague and so on. It needs to be a dynamic process that looks to the future and not constantly to the past. So when that will be, that of course we also need to keep in mind the current circumstance. We also will have to work a lot on improving our online distance interactions and cooperation, given the coronavirus limitations and so on, and the uncertainty of big assemblies in Europe and the world. But there are a lot of meat for us to dig our teeth into. Yes, okay, so we have some people who are stacking up, starting with Michele.
Yes, I think, as I said before, this kind of discussion is not the best to have live stream in YouTube. I think we have to show respect to other political forces among the progressive if we want to be hegemonic. Not towards eventually some people that maybe are making politics just to have seats somewhere, but towards also the activists or that forces. I don't think that Sinistra Italiana activists, the few they still have, they are there to have a seat in the parliament or to have other political careers. They are there because they are convinced on an ideal. And as far as we don't become relevant and hegemonic, they will stay in that party or in Rifondazione Comunista or others. But I don't want to stress more on this. I think we need really a meeting all together with Yanis, to examine at best this. But first of all, let's give respect to all the activists, all the progressive forces at the global level. We are not building international progressives alone in the world. And I think also at European level, we had the experience, the great experience, so not successful European Spring. And also, I think in Italy, at the national and local level, let's show respect. Apart that, if Yanis and all the CC, we read in detail the Red Swallow document, the electoral consent, you will read at the end of this document that we are saying that by the end of the year, we probably should consider to launch a new political party in Italy, named maybe Giorno, which is the translation of Diem, the acronym of our movement in Italian, exactly as Mera is the translation of Diem in Greek. That will be probably a sister party of Mera in Greece, as not to, as Yanis underlined, as not, the context is different. And as many times we have said, to build up a party is not necessarily means that then you run with your own list, but you are ready to run with your own list. Be aware for all the people that don't know the Italian context, that if we present ourselves as just another new political party there to divide the left, etc., we are risking to lose consensus. So what we need is a cultural hegemony, counter-cultural hegemony, organization and generosity, inclusivity, started to talk especially with the movements. Someone said before, Fridays for Future, Extinction Rebellion, Ni Una Di Meno, Sono Una Di Meno, a strong feminist movement in Italy is very present, with the trade unions, and of course, it tried to involve the leadership of this movement in the leadership of our own party, and then be the point of reference for all the progressive forces, asking to debate and build up with us a program for a post-capitalist Italy, in a post-capitalist Europe, in a post-capitalist world. So if we are not inclusive, we risk to lose consensus. But I think we need this discussion not live stream, because politics, especially among comrades, they have to plan a plan, cannot be live streamed. If not, that become a show. Let's be aware of that. All that said, I think that we must be ready to build up from now this perspective with the best aim by all of us, and I'm sure we will do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michele. I mean, speaking against live stream while being live streamed, it's the method.
That was what you offer, and was communicated like last
Yes.
day. That was live stream, so that's a matter of organization. You should say that before, and we organize a different way. That was a bit improvised, but it's good. I mean, thank you very much, Eric, to have made this possible. Maybe let's be more also democratic when we want to consider how to gather all together. Maybe also in the platform we want to use, etc. But thank you very much again, because that's a great opportunity.
Thank you, Michele, and please stack when you would like the floor. So let's move on this discussion. I think there is something definitely to be said on this point that Michele has raised regarding what he refers to as respect and cooperation with others, which I don't think Diem is in any way opposed to, nor is Yanis's intervention against any of those points. So let's see where others take this point, and then I would also like the floor at some point towards the end. Let me see who we have here. We have, no, that's not a stack, but Simona. Simona has a stack. Simona, please.
I think we are focusing too much on alliances and on other political forces. I think that we should focus instead on what we propose people. Other forces will follow if they agree on what if people agrees with what we propose. This is to show other forces respect too. Talking about alliances and proposals, Bonaccini, the Regione Emilia-Romagna president that we supported through an all-member vote while supporting Eli Schlein, has just stated those who receive the citizens' income, that is Italian name for basic income, should go and help in the fields in agriculture, because agriculture is in crisis because of the lack of immigrants that is a consequence of closing the borders. I think we should say something very critical about it. Do you agree?
Thank you, Simona. I couldn't agree more. And if Diem and what Diem is and what Diem represents doesn't have a absolutely unequivocal stance on something like this, I don't know who should. I know Yanis would like to respond to something that was addressed by Michele, so I'll give the floor back to Yanis and then we continue with the stack.
Just one very, very, very brief point about live streaming. Folks, we were founded with transparency as a major pillar. We were asking from day one for Eurogroup meetings to be live streamed. We've got nothing to fear. There is nothing, Michele, I will say to you in private that I wouldn't say in public. Absolutely nothing. I trust the public out there, okay? Those who are well-meaning, including the activists of Sinistra Italiana, whom of course we embrace. When I mentioned the careerists, I meant there are candidates and the people who actually put together and effectively destroyed those agglomerations. I want them to watch us. I want them to know exactly what we're talking about. It's amazing that we can do this out in the open. We don't fear the public's eyes or ears. If our opponents want to use anything of what we say here against us, you know what we will turn around and say to them? The only reason why you know that I said this or he said that or she said that is because we let you. Isn't that fantastic? You owe us one. And how about the other political parties doing the same? I'm very proud that as far as I'm concerned, we should live stream everything. Absolutely everything that involves these kinds of discussions, even strategizing. I don't believe in Machiavellian politics where we're going to beat the enemy because the enemy doesn't know what we're doing. I believe in light versus darkness. I mean, today, it's Easter now here in Greece, so allow me to be sentimental about light. Hugs.
Thanks, Yanis. It's easy for a Greek to talk about light. Some of us forget what it looks like. So I'm not going to add anything. This is one of the problems of being the moderator. You don't join Diem not to speak. You join Diem because you have so much to say. But as a moderator, I'll try and bite my tongue, and I'll give the floor to Stefania, who is up next, and then we go to Alberto.
I just have a final question and a final remark to everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah, the question is, it's very simple. Like, where are we sitting now at home, and why? Because we cannot get out. Why? Because there is an invisible virus that is just hitting us. So we can talk about the most beautiful proposals for the future, but this health and environmental catastrophe is not new. It's been for long announced, and more will come. Much more will come. It's been clearly told by scientists and experts for a long time. Therefore, I think that here the core issue is to be restarting for the environment, meaning not misusing and abusing natural resources, but just having a sustainable pattern for not only the environment, but then putting there inside the economy. So a new economic model that somehow puts into the environmental frame.
Thank you very much, Stefania. We have Alberto up next, and then we will try and start wrapping up as we have 15 minutes left.
Thank you, everybody. I do believe too that we shouldn't only work behind closed doors. I don't like to be too much Machiavellic, but most of all, I think we must go outside our own bubble. The world, the planet, is not made by only these few political persons. It is made of human beings. We have children, wives, husbands, daughters, sons, and so on. We should start thinking more for the people than we are thinking for the political. In this period, we are facing an increase in suicides from the crisis. They will rise even more in the next month. So we should think firstly to the basic needs of people. People somewhere, somehow is dying from this crisis. So my guess, my request is that we should start listen more to people outside Diem25, but also to people outside the political parties. We need the necessary strength to make successful the implementation of our plans and our proposals. We need human resources. We need people to volunteers. So my request is let's look for more volunteers and less for more alliances. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Alberto. I believe there is a question from Piera. So let's go to Piera and we will attempt a summarization of the discussion. Piera.
I want to ask to our dear Yanis and Secretary of Mera 25. Now, how is the situation in COVID crisis in Parliament about the COVID crisis and the migration? I know that Sofia Sakorafa, she asked for tele-education for the Greek children in Ireland. They don't have don't have internet. Also in Italy, in South Italy, 30% of person of children are not in internet. So I want to ask this problem, the role of Mera in Parliament now, and the problem of migration. I heard that l'asilo politico, the political asilo for migrants, want to be suspended. It's true? Thanks.
Yanis, would you like to venture a short response?
Very briefly, the Greek government is committing crimes against humanity. Crimes against humanity. They have locked down the prison camps without any medical facilities. They simply said, okay, now you're barricaded. You can't get in. Sorry, you can't get out. Nobody can get in. No doctors, no medical staff, nothing. We have, 25,000 people in Moria living in tents with, it rains, it's very cold. The mud goes through the tent. So, they get colds like all of us would. Thankfully, no coronavirus has been detected yet in there. It hasn't spread, even if somebody has it, or at least we don't know it. But we will not know it. These people would die in there. We would not even know about it. It's mind-boggling. Also, let me tell you that our estimation is 15% of Greeks who are now locked in their houses don't have anything to eat. They are the people who had no jobs or had precarious jobs or who were begging, okay? They cannot get out. They will get not €1 from the government, and they are there languishing on their own, starving. We proposed MasterCards with €300, no more, prepaid to be distributed anonymously, just numbers, no names. I had done that when I was minister in March 2015. For this, the government, I talked to the Prime Minister personally. I picked up the phone and I said to him, you've got a duty. It's nothing. The money is nothing. It's 700 million. So who cares in today's situation? He said, I will look into it. Haven't done anything. So a people that have been savaged by 10 years of a depression, together with the people who have been savaged by migration and being refugees, are now in a situation where you don't hear about them. You can't hear them scream. You can't hear them suffer. It's silence, silencio, right? And we are the only voice that screams on their behalf. But of course, the demonization from the media is just unbelievable. They do anything in order to silence us by talking about, me being in this house and not in my Athens house, and whatever it takes in order to make sure that what you are asking is not answered.
Thanks, Yanni.
Thank you, Yanis. All right, so I see there are still a couple of stacks. Let's have those. I think we have time. We'll take 2 more speaks and then we will wrap up as we're running out of time now. So the first one is we have Antonella. Antonella.
Sorry, I was muted. Well, just 3 thoughts. The first, I was told that healthcare in Greece has been cut by 75% after the Troika recipe. So if it's true, they are responsible for all the death of this pandemic situation. And we should stress this idea, because the neoliberal and the culture has to be broken. They are liar. Their rule doesn't work for the humanity. So just to hint, the first one is the idea of attending or supportive of the Forum for Transformative
Excuse me, Antonella. Michele, please mute yourself. Michele, you're, yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Antonella.
Yes, the forum that will be probably not live, but I don't know, probably on web. It takes place on the 25 to the 28th of June, and I know that is a melting pot of feminist movement and commons association on commons, and I think there that could be some thought that could be useful for the development of the post-capitalist pillar. And the last thing that I want to say is that on the 25th of April, there will be the Freedom Feast in remembering the freedom from Nazi fascist forces in 1944. And this is a national holiday. And this year, it has a little bit nationalistic sound. So it would be nice if we relaunch this feast as a transnational, joining the Italian flag or Spanish flag with the European flag. And on the 3:00 p.m., we all sing Bella Ciao. So it would be nice if we use this appointment for a transnational Bella Ciao. Ciao.
Thank you, Antonella. All these things, I mean, obviously we cannot respond to everything in one Zoom, nor is that the point. This conversation will continue. You know, we will draw all the content, the rich content that we've developed through this call today, and continue the conversation and plan the next steps based on that. So we have one more intervention by Ludovico, and then we will end summary.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, like first of all, like I would like to pick up on what briefly mentioned Yanis in your reply about the kind of like communication presence. And for example, yesterday exactly we worked on a press release on the vote by Lega Nord against Eurobonds, precisely because of that, because it's important to kind of like work and show who actually serves even the Italian interest and who doesn't. I would like to respond to also to Ivan, Yanis, and Simona by saying that I like my point. Like there is a difference between alliance and constructing hegemony, and flexibility is precisely part of that. Precisely part of that strategy. And I said exactly what I said. I repeat what I said in the first in my first speech about we need to have very clear what we want, and that is precisely the type of clarity that in other contexts sometimes lacks. And so we need to be clear on the European continental and international horizon that we have. At the same time, we need to be where people akin to like the people that we want to include are, and be open to debates and dialogue, and construct processes that can include people that don't think like us. And this is again the reference to speaking to and with Lexiteers to build to build a consensus around our platforms that is actually able to construct hegemony. Because the thing is that, yeah, as Yanis said, we are all Gramscians, but the difference is that the Communist Party went from having 21 MPs to having 21%, with a painstaking process of inclusion that passes also through the thesis of Lyon, that are not a plan of constructing coalitions, but it's sometimes uncomfortable conversation with people that not immediately think the same way you think, and it's a conversation that has to be carried out with respect. And in the more recent years, when he first ran for senator, Bernie Sanders was endorsed by Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid, which are hardly socialists. So it's a matter of when one builds hegemony, it's a matter of speaking with as many people as possible, being in the lead in that conversation, and being able to construct like understanding who, like what each dialogue is doing in terms of building future steps. So I'm not a fan of like I agree with Yanis in terms of like building not building hegemony without knowing what you are hegemonizing on, and what are the like hegemony for hegemony's sake. It's not what we are talking about here, but it's a matter of individual steps that locally construct the condition for further advances, and it's not so much a matter of coalitions or alliances, but it's a matter of there is a labor done also into articulating previous geometries and creating new ones that require long processes and respectful reworking of a respective position.
Thank you very much, Ludovico. It's true. I think a good quote that really summarizes this, but not from our own sort of perspective, but one of an artist. Let's say William Blake, a poet. A beautiful quote by him is that I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's. Unless that is understood of him as a utilitarian, which if you're familiar with William Blake, he was not, far from it. He says, my job is not to reason, it is to go forward and create. So it's really for Diem, whether we have discussions, which we must do, you know, we weren't created to reinvent the wheel. At the same time, it is incredibly important when you have discussions that you go into them knowing very well who you are. Beyond trying to be the cohesion that will unite forces that have historically been divided. If you don't go with a program, with form, with a policy, with an agenda that will unify them. So to do it through, you know, sheer power of will is something that obviously will not lead us very far. And that is the job that we have started this year with Diem, and we will be building on, not to create our own thing and lock out the world, but to develop an identity for ourselves, to create our system so that we're not enslaved by the systems of others, and then go bravely out into the world with it. But we need to, it is important that we get the process right, that we do the steps in the right order, and do not end up with the cart in front of the horse. So, you know, like we said, today was only the beginning of this conversation for us. In 4 or 5 days, we will have another one with our French comrades, then with the Germans, and with the British, and so on and so forth. And if there is one thing that we can promise friends and foes of Diem25, is that they will always know what we think, you know? They will always know where we stand. They will always know that our door is open, and that what we believe politically, but also personally, will always be there for them to assess and decide what their stance should be vis-a-vis us. That we are not just another political party when we create electoral wings, but we're not just another political movement either. And that is the process that we're trying to start with this call today. Also, not to just leave it on discussion and theory, it is important that we start creating the infrastructure that we need in order to move from policy creation, from political marches, things that Diem is already quite good at doing, writing policies and so on, to action. And in that direction, we have been working quite hard behind the scenes. We will also be connecting, of course, all our electoral wings with that process. There should be a link right now in the chat, in the YouTube. It's a form for anybody who feels like less like talking and more like acting, more like getting their hands dirty, more like organizing local communities, more like bringing the fight to the establishment. We are creating a group of these kinds of organizers, of activists, who will then go around Diem, around our ecosystem, and bring the fight to the establishment, using our policies, using our ideas, but translating them into action. And this will be a resource for all of us, both at the European level and also at the national level. So please go ahead and sign up. You will also, all our NCs will receive this link so you can share it with your own activists, and we can start developing this pool of a SWAT team, if you like, for Diem, so we can move ahead and bring the fight where the fight needs to be. So on that point, thank you all so much for being here on a Saturday morning. I hope this was useful. It's we will have many, many more. Thank you. Thank you also to the team, the technical team that made all of this possible. And have a lovely weekend, everyone.